Hi, and thank you all for joining us today. We are broadcasting live on the United Public Radio Network and the UFO Paranormal Radio Network, 105.3 on the Gulf Coast and 107.7 FM in New Orleans. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. And as always, I'm super excited about our topic. And just to reiterate, welcome to Ethereal Encounters Unveiled, where hopefully we can help you to discover your truth. Today, we're broadcasting on the United Public Radio Network and the UFO Paranormal Radio Network, which is 105.3 on the Gulf Coast and 107.7 FM in New Orleans. Since this is a pre-recorded show, they air every Friday at 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Please be sure and leave some comments. I always watch the videos as they play on Fridays. So I will be in the chat room. If anybody wants to comment or ask questions, that would be awesome. And today we have a really compelling topic, and I'm very excited to welcome back Adam, or A.W. Finnegan. So I want you to think about, for a moment, your own life, your family, your friends. Chances are chronic illness has touched someone you know, perhaps even yourself. From diabetes to heart disease, autoimmune conditions to mental health challenges, these aren't just mental diagnoses. They are pervasive issues that have become an undeniable part of the American landscape, as well as, of course, globally. Today, we're confronting this reality head on and delving into what we call America's silent epidemic, chronic disease revealed. And to guide us through this crucial conversation, we're honored to have Adam Finnegan. Welcome, Adam. Let me bring him on stage. Welcome so much, Adam.
Thank you for having me on. It's a pleasure to be here.
Of course. And just so that folks know who you are, I'm going to give you a minute or two to take the stage and also let folks know, of course, about your book, which I will have the link to in the description of all the videos on social media. So if you want to reach out, you'll be able to find Adam's website, all his social media, as well as a link to his book. Adam's, right. If you could hold that up, Adam, so folks can see it. So our last conversation that we had was really directed towards the contents of this book, The Sleeper Agent. And it was an excellent chat. And of course, I'm going to put that in the link as well, so folks can watch that. And today, we're going to take a little bit of a twist and turn into like the rudimentaries of chronic illness and all the years that you've spent researching not only your book, but this topic as well. I mean, you aren't some fly-by-night person making willy-nilly statements about things that have to do with this topic. You've done some serious decades, I guess a decade at least, of work and research. You've also spoken in front of, was it Congress, Adam, or just a committee?
Oh, yeah, it was a committee in my state to promote bodily autonomy. And, because they want to remove religious exemptions and all this stuff. And it's like a lot of people are fighting to try to keep the public health system from becoming this authoritarian, with their policies. And it's just,
yeah,
I mean, awful. as it is, it's really bad. But I did, yeah, I felt it was my duty, I think everybody should get involved with their local health freedom groups. Usually every state has one or something, I think, or somewhere closer to wherever you are. And they're probably national ones too. But I get involved and we're constantly trying to kind of push them back because they're just constantly trying to sneak in these bills that are just so bad.
Yeah.
And so I did that. I posted it up. It's because it's like sometimes you gotta lead by example.
Absolutely.
I got into this work because I got a chronic disease. And when I realized that they had absolutely nothing to offer me, no help, and they couldn't diagnose me with anything, it was like, wow, this is insane. And then to know all these other people are on the same boat. So I really wanted to get into the heart of that. And especially, I mean, I did tie Lyme disease into it because that's a big thing, but Lyme disease is just one of
Yeah.
many things with this certain antigen. Right. And so the title of my book, The Sleeper Agent, The Rise of Lyme Disease, Chronic Illness, and the Great Imitator, Antigens of Biological Warfare. It's these little proteins on the outsides, right? And they can be on viruses, bacteria, or whatever. And that's what he found, was that this could disrupt the immune system. And then just using them on their own, as you know, like the public health system does, to try to protect against it, that too will bring it on. So it's and so I got into this work. I basically, this is the first book that goes deep into the life of Erich Traub. A lot of people have heard of him from that book, Lab 257, Michael Christopher Carroll on Plum Island. That's when his name became more well known. But this is the first book that like just goes deep into his work, and it goes deep into his life, and follows him from the very early days all the way to his death in 1985. And he discovered some things. So he was a bioweapons expert, but he was also a pioneer in virology and immunology. I mean, what he discovered, you could say, you could use that information to try to do good, or you could use that, what he discovered, to try to, to make weapons. And that's what he chose to do. But there was a discovery he made in 1935. And it was basically the underpinnings of chronic disease. So what he did was he injected these mice with this foreign proteins, and he was trying to see if he could reactivate a latent virus from within the mice, right? So he injects them with foreign proteins. It caused some kind of shock, or septic shock or something, and it destroyed its immune system, and then it reactivated these latent viruses, and all of this spread to all of the other mice. They all got sick, but it was a chronic infection. Like they would have this chronic infection. He reactivated it, and they would have like this immunosuppression. And when they would give birth to the next generation, all of those mice would be infected, right? And they would not have any antibodies to the virus that reactivated, even though they could infect others with it. They didn't make any antibodies because they were infected from birth.
Let me just ask, how did this virus spread? Was it airborne, or was it through eating each other's food and
Yeah, I think it was more like, as far as I could tell, it may be airborne, but I think it was definitely by contact kind of thing, like in the colony as well. Yeah. Although a couple of the animal handlers also got sick with this virus. It was called the LCM virus, lymphocytic choriomeningitis virus, and that's what he spent his life studying. And but what he did, injecting foreign protein is basically a simulation of what the public health system does. You know what I mean? Like the stuff that we can't really talk about, but I'm just kind of hinting at it that, if you look at what he did, he injected the mice and it was toxic, and then it reactivated a virus and started an epidemic from scratch. So if you think about that, that's the same thing we could be doing to a lot of people. And I think that happens very often. Yeah. So he discovered this thing, and he noticed no antibodies, no visible inflammation, but they were chronically infected. That he could get the virus from them, the tissues, blood, or actually it may have cleared from the blood, but they would be infected for life, right? And halfway through their life, they would look normal sometimes for their whole life, but they would come down with these slow, chronic, neurodegenerative diseases. Oh, halfway through their life. And it's really concerning because this kind of like flies in the face of immunology today. Like they don't consider that some things that people can't make antibodies to certain things, even though they can have a chronic infection. And that's a big deal with Lyme disease because a lot of people that are infected with Lyme disease will test negative, right? Because they're immunosuppressed. So if your immune system's not working properly, it's not going to make the antibodies that it should be.
All right, that would show up on the test.
And
yeah,
so, but it's still causing serious harm to them, and it's a chronic infection. So, and there's like basically the Western immunology goes, inflammation, the cause of all disease. But what this shows is that may only be half true. There may be from what his work shows, that there is also an entirely other side of disease. That's the polar opposite of inflammation, but it reactivates virus, and you have these viruses slowly destroying you from the inside out. And there's no inflammation because the immune system is not working properly.
Right.
So it's weird because they never included it into our immunology, like into our public health policy. Like this is something that would have been a pillar of chronic disease. He was discovering kind of like the mechanics of chronic disease. Most, like I would say, all chronic diseases involves some kind of immunosuppression where the immune system can't work properly. That's why you just can't seem to get rid of these problems, because your immune system is just like, it's down.
Let me ask you a question. Did they find the origins or basis of why, like in humans, the immune system is suppressed? Like I had, unfortunately, 3 different autoimmune issues in my life. I had Graves' disease, which is an autoimmune problem. I had to have my thyroid removed because of that. And then about 10 years ago, I unfortunately caught Guillain-Barré, which was a nightmare to live through. And then about 2 years ago, I got Lyme's disease. So I see all 3 things as connected to my autoimmune problem.
Autoimmunity will happen oftentimes in parallel.
Right.
So you've got to think, I tend to think of it as not so much an overcharged immune system, but a confused immune system.
Mm-hmm.
There was an excellent paper. This is what it was called. It was called Autoimmunity and Primary Immunodeficiency, 2 sides of the same coin.
Could you put that in the chat?
Yeah, hold on a second. I have the link. Sure.
Yeah. There's a private chat you'll see over to the right.
I got it.
Yeah, because
there we go. I put it up there. And there's a paper, and it's kind of like, it says autoimmunity and immunodeficiency were previously considered to be mutually exclusive conditions. However, increasing understanding of the complex immune regulatory and signaling mechanisms involved, coupled with the application of genetic analysis, is revealing the complex relationships between primary immunodeficiency syndromes and autoimmune diseases. So what Erich Traub did touch upon autoimmunity, and he found that that this would happen in parallel too. Like it was, the immune system was just kind of thrown into disarray, and it was like this battle. This virus and reactivating the viruses from the inside, kind of like destroying your body from the inside out. That was the basis of his weapons. Like he was making these incapacitating agents.
Yeah.
And so when he found this discovery, when he discovered this and everything, it was strange because they knew that this immune tolerance condition, that's what they called it. It's also been called immune paralysis, which is a better term for it. But they called it immune tolerance. He didn't come up with that name, but somebody else did. And it was weird because in 1960, what they did was they gave the Nobel Prize to these two guys who didn't work together, and and nobody had nominated them at all, and they were given the prize for immune tolerance, but it was made about organ transplant recipients because the same thing happens with that. So it's like a foreign organ probably has all sorts of different pathogens in it, you know, because your genome's made up of that too. Like bacteria and viruses kind of make up the certain percentage of the human genome. You're getting different organs with different stuff in there. It's probably gonna do the same thing. But so what they did was they kind of like made it about that, and then just kind of ignored the whole idea of immune tolerance relating to infections and antigens. Because if they did that, it would have thrown the whole industry upside down. Because
in what way?
Because basically what it looks like their medical countermeasures are doing is burning out the immune system slowly. As you so each shot is just more immunosuppressive, and then you reach this state. And it's kind of like if they had acknowledged that, it would have kind of forced people to confront something very unsettling about their science.
Yeah. What did you find out, like, what was the cause in humans of autoimmune disease to begin with? Like, what triggers someone's immune system to do these, you know, to behave this way? What was it?
I believe it's this antigen. I believe so. With this antigen, it gets into all the tissues. Like it fuses with the tissues. Sometimes they call these fusion proteins and such, and there's different proteins that gets all into the tissues, organs. So it's signaling the immune system that there's a pathogen here that it needs to take care of, certain antigen. And so it may start attacking that organ or whatever it is, thinking that, you know, because it's having signals that there's antigen in here, but it's all mixed in with
itself.
Huh? Yeah.
Your body is attacking itself, in other words. Yeah.
It's struggling to eradicate this foreign invader, but it's like being completely overwhelmed. And I would say that probably it's doing what it can, and the signaling between all of the immune system is kind of like getting signals to attack your own tissues because there's all sorts of antigen in there. I don't know. I mean, that's kind of like my guess, but a lot of it too, I think there's a lot of autoimmunity that's actually virus reactivation. And it's slowly destroying your tissue. So it's actually not true autoimmunity, but it's immunosuppression and virus reactivation. And that's why there's no inflammation involved. Like sometimes, like with the fibromyalgia, they can't see any inflammation, but you know, I have it. My headaches too. Yeah, like my headaches, I have constant headaches that never go away. And I remember I used to go in.
Did you get fibromyalgia after Lyme, so before?
Yeah, I mean, it came on 2016 is the year that it really started to go downhill.
Yeah.
I think that's when I got sick. And yeah, I mean, I have horrible fibromyalgia, but if you go to a scan, they can't see anything.
Yeah.
They scan my head. It feels like my head's being crushed in a vice, but they can't see anything. So there's like this whole other side of disease that's not based on inflammation. And a lot of times I think that they will call something autoimmunity because they can't figure it out, and they can't actually acknowledge this other side of science. They excluded it completely, right? This would have, so they did this in 1960, right? There is also a paper where it says that this Nobel Prize, I'll put it in the thing, this Nobel Prize It says the 1960 Nobel Prize was awarded to McFarlane Burnett and Peter Medawar for immunological tolerance. The Nobel archives reveal that the two were never nominated together by anyone. Burnett had repeatedly been nominated for his virology studies, and the Medawar group, including Rupert Billingham and Leslie Brent, had been nominated independently for their transplantation work. A review of the 1950s literature suggests that tolerance had not yet, by 1960, reached a level of acceptance and acclaim in the immunological community to appear to justify the award. So they were given the award, and they were given this award in error. And it's when you read the sleeper agent, it makes a lot of sense why they did that, because you had this whole war that was playing out, and all of Erich Traub's stealth agents that he was making, because this was his discovery, and he became kind of like the godfather of this. But he chose to use that knowledge for harm. But at the same time, if people understood this, if we accepted this into our immunology, it would have allowed us to understand chronic disease, like starting back in 1960. And the strange thing is, right? So they didn't include this into public health policy. But what they were doing, there was a conference, because they meet with each other. There was a conference in 1971, right? It was called Immunological Tolerance to Microbial Antigen, right? And it was held in New York. And there were all these prominent American scientists and vaccine developers like Maurice Hilleman. Just a lot of people there. They invited Erich Traub to be there, but he couldn't attend because he was in Iran at the time. And so they understood the science, and they were meeting and talking about it. And what's even worse is in 2012, and this was a study funded by the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, there was a paper called Disease Tolerance as a Defense Strategy, right? So it's weird because they're looking at this almost as like an acceptable immunity. Well, if we burn out their immune system, it doesn't respond to a pathogen, and then, that can count as protection, even though doing that would be a terrible idea long term. Because when you induce this immune tolerance condition, or immune paralysis is a better word, you're paralyzing the immune system.
Yeah.
Right. So you may not respond to let's say a bioweapon attack. You may not, if they induce tolerance in everybody, they may not get that fatal disease from a bioweapons attack, but they'll be plagued with chronic health problems. So there's also a triplet that occurs. I call it the dark triad of immune tolerance. It's chronic disease, neuropsychiatric disorders, and cancers. Those three things were involved. Like, so Erich Traub's studies early on with this LCM virus, he said they would all start developing cancer at a very high rate, leukemia.
Yeah.
And he also, like, the neurological aspects. Not everybody, so everybody's going to have a different kind of disease. It's not going to be, sometimes it's not all those three. A lot of times, though, it ends in cancer. But some people will have mental problems, right? And they don't really have all of the fibromyalgia and all that stuff. But then I think at some point they will get it. And, like autism is immunological in nature. Like they've studied that. And what basically his science shows, so like we were saying before, when you inject toxic antigen, it causes virus reactivation. And a lot of times in young children, that can mean all sorts of neurological effects.
Right. Yeah, I know we have to walk gently, on topics.
Of course.
Is there a precursor for, or was in your research, were there any certain demographics or a precursor for certain types of people that get autoimmune disease, or is it just a broad spectrum type of thing? It hits anybody, anywhere, anytime.
No, it's good that you brought that up. So this is something too. This is called HLA, human leukocyte antigen. It's like, you know how you have like different blood types, or you have variants of a virus, or you have variants of the immune system too. So that's something that that's something also that makes ethnic bioweapons possible. So different races will have a different immunological makeup, but even within those races, there'll be different like haplotypes. So that was one area where they did do a lot of research in the biological weapons realm, targeting certain genetic profiles. Of course, like, so I know that Russia was doing there was a lot of Russians at New York Medical College, NYMC, and they were doing all this research on HLA about Ukrainians. So it's like, if you wanted to make a weapon that only hit Ukrainians, like that was their goal.
Were they using like DNA markers to do that?
Yeah, all sorts of stuff. And blood banks was a big thing. So they could also study it through blood banks and things of that nature. But that was one area, and they noticed, different races would react differently to the same agent, spirochetes. So
is that like sickle cell in African population?
Yeah, that would be, yeah, exactly. And so there are different types of people. So it's weird. It's like there seemed to be this is a general average ratio, but like 85% of the people would get the immunosuppressive Lyme, and 15% would get they would have a better immune response, and they would have a much better outcome and less disease. Yeah. And they would only have like a swollen knee. Those 15% too are the only ones who can really make the antibodies for that CDC standard Lyme test. The other 85 with the immunosuppressive outcome, they usually test negative on that test. Although there's a mix of the two a little bit too, but a lot of people will be infected and they won't make any antibodies. And so they made the CDC standard test Dearborn 1994 to exclude all of those cases and just focus on this 15%. And then they can say, oh, well, it's not such a bad disease because, look, these people get better. You know what I mean?
But there is a large percentage of people that don't get better, that have...
Exactly. And that's the immune tolerance realm, right? Or immune paralysis realm. I am working on a second book to go into this specifically, because it's just such an important thing. I mean, this is the basis of chronic disease. Like he's figured it out. He's figured it out. And what are we seeing rising in parallel? Mental illness, neurological disorders, and cancers.
Let me ask you this. Obviously, the scientists globally know of Traub's work. Why couldn't they just back engineer or reverse engineer what he did to find a remedy or a cure for that? Has anybody done that type of work? Is anybody doing anything about this?
I have never seen any alternative doctor address immune tolerance. I mean, barely anybody knows what it is, but it's all in Erich Traub's work. I'm probably the only person who went and I collected every single paper Erich Traub ever published. And I mean, a lot of it was in German. I had to translate.
Oh, wow.
So I have the English translations of everything. And so I went through all of that, reading it and stuff. And wow, so I was taught too by this other lady. She used to be a chem analyst for Pfizer, and she started this thing called Truth Cures, which she's not involved with it anymore. But she people in that group, they were like a Facebook group I joined. People in that group, this girl Jenna taught me all about the immune tolerance thing. And then I realized, because I started looking into Traub, and I'm like, this guy's mysterious. I want to know more about him. And then I found out that he was actually the one who discovered it. So I had learned about the immune tolerance before I knew about Traub's work with it. And I started to understand it. And it's like you get chronic immunosuppression, and once your immune system's down, then these viruses reactivate. Like Epstein-Barr virus is a really big one that a lot of people will have.
Yeah.
And that LCM virus that Traub was studying is almost like an animal model of EBV. Because a lot of people will get reactivation of EBV when they get a chronic disease. So if you get Lyme disease and you get that immunosuppressive outcome, then the EBV starts to reactivate. Also,
you know what's interesting too, and I know you know this. At the time of that thing, you know what I'm talking about, right?
Yes.
A lot of folks were actors, actresses coming on TV with the face paralysis with the Epstein-Barr.
Yep, that's what exactly.
Right?
Yeah. And so that antigen, I looked it up, it hits the receptors of the immune system that bring on immune tolerance. And then what I realized is actually, it looks like they were trying to do that. It looks like they were trying to cause that as an acceptable form of immunity. So my whole theory is that we've kind of been taken over by hostile groups, and our public health system has been kind of taken over slowly over time. I'm talking, since way back, 1800s, 1900s, just slow infiltration, probably, like British. And I was talking about how the British were attacking us from the very beginning.
Mm.
And then you could kind of look at the Soviet Union as like a British intelligence really like helped to kind of like create that in a big way. And then
Traub German though, with the Project Paper thing.
Right. And so Erich Traub, he was just this brilliant guy. He was like an evil genius, you could say, but he was brilliant with his work, and he was very skilled. And he was like, I was able to link the spirochete. Like I have him with the spirochete through his student. It's a strain from birds called Borrelia anserina. And he adapted it to different land animals because he wanted it to be able to spread all over the place.
Yeah, and in our last conversation, you go into the spirochete, and we also showed images. So folks, make sure you definitely check out that interview, because Adam explains very clearly what that is and how Traub used birds to like drop these viruses all over the country, correct?
Yeah, like and these ticks with multiple infections all rolled into one. I call it I think actually Garth Nicholson named it the Russian doll cocktail, because it's like infection within an infection within an infection.
Yeah.
But it caused the same immune tolerance condition. So that's what he was kind of going for. Let's get these ticks so that when they bite people, it causes immune tolerance in a lot of them.
Let me ask you this: who else wrote a book similar to yours? What are there a lot of books out there with the same type of research you did? Like what notoriety are you getting for all your hard work?
I mean, I think, well, there's a lot of people that come ask me about Chris Newby's book Bitten. I just feel like this is the story. Like this, I figured out the story. Yeah, I think she was correct in that Willy Bergdorfer knew all about this. He was in biodefense. He knew all about what happened. And when he was talking to her, I think he was hinting at not that he made Lyme disease, but that it was this guy. Like, so even in the intelligence files, they're like, there's nobody as skilled as Erich Traub here. Nobody can replace him. Mm. He was basically put at the top of the biological weapons program. And like him and his lab tech were it was saying in the files that they should be working alone because they're the only ones who know how to handle these pathogens. And Willy Bergdorfer accidentally infected himself when he was trying to do some research. So all of this went down. I have it. All of this went down right before Willy Bergdorfer even signed on to biodefense. So all of this had gone down. Erich Traub was already sent back to Germany. And then Willy Bergdorfer comes in. But I really do believe he was working on biodefense. They knew that all these pathogens were spreading. And he was trying to help them kind of figure out the situation. Now, they also did have a biological weapons program, and he participated in that. But it was Erich Traub that really, I believe the Lyme disease is linked right to Traub, and I have him with the spirochetes. And whoever made that had to have been a veterinarian, because what he did was he adapted it to all these other animals, and that was his skill, was the art of adaptation.
And he knew that it would go animal to human transmission. I'm
right.
sure he studied that, right?
And having all of those rolled in one. So I have a paper where he's learning about that through his mentor. His mentor's name was Carl Bellet, right? And he published a paper on animal rickettsia, the rickettsioses of animals. And he talked about how, and this was right when Erich Traub was working under him. He was talking about how there's a complex disease that comes when a dog was bitten with a mix of infections, and he named rickettsia, babesia, Bartonella.
Oh, Bartonella,
those are all the 3 co-infections that we find now in America. So he was learning about that, and that was the same year that he got that spirochete, that Borrelia spirochete. I have not seen any book that goes into the history of biological warfare like this one, covering, because this goes really deep. I mean, I have not seen anything like it yet.
Has anybody reached out to you for the work that you've done? I mean, you're not a doctor. You don't have a science background, correct?
Oh, yeah. And to answer your question, yeah, I'm not it seems that what they're doing with this one is just ignoring it completely.
Yeah.
And this has happened to other people that had really good research. Like when it's just like damning, and they don't even want to mention it. That's my take.
Yeah, no, I totally believe that. Have you reached out to anybody in the field? Because just offhand, I'm thinking of that doctor on YouTube. What's his name? Joseph. He does his like weekly, monthly updates on pandemic stuff. I forget his name offhand, but I have to send it to you because I think he'd be perfect for you to reach out to him. He kind of covers a lot of what you're talking about. He's got millions of followers on YouTube.
Oh, really? Yeah. I mean, I'm going to start working harder on getting better interviews. I did do a Coast to Coast AM.
Oh, that was cool.
Yeah, I did that last March, and I had fun doing that. I've got plenty of interviews, but yeah, I mean, I've got a little bit. Some people, actually, I haven't really got much criticism. I mean, some of them that I don't even know if they were even human interaction. A lot of these bots that they have on the internet, you know? But there's a lot of it, like, because it's going to be really hard for them to prove this to be wrong, because it's like just so well backed up.
Yeah, I'm trying to get his name.
Are you talking about Joseph Mercola or something?
No, it's some other dude. He's on. I subscribe to him. You think I would remember his name? But anyway, I'll find it.
It happens to me all the time. I forget.
Yeah, oh my God. You know what it is? I'm great at faces. I never forget, but names takes me a minute to like. But he's on all the time, and I can't help but think that you two would make a great team. Plus, he's got millions of followers. But I'll get it. I'll find it.
But I mean, this would be like this is the chronic disease. This is what's going on with everybody. Their immune system's being burnt out. And Erich Traub's work is almost like a microcosm of this macrocosm.
Yeah. How'd you get all of his notes? How'd you get Traub's all those binders of notes?
You know, so you can see over here, those are all Erich Traub things. And so I collected, so what I would do is I would just, a lot of times he'll cite papers of his in the end, like you'll have the footnotes, and I just like started collecting everything that I could find on Traub.
Wow.
And I happened to figure out and it was, I was buying a lot of these from a distributor online who had access to the German universities where it was the only place you could find those papers he had. So somebody helped me, an amazing woman, Crystal Bennett, and she helped me get a lot of these papers. And it was like, so I asked him, can you find something like can you type in his name and see all of the publications that he has, and he would send it to me, and then I'd work from that, and sometimes I'd find another one, in the footnotes and stuff, and it was like
did all this data through the years. I found it because it just put name. That'll do that. The name will just pop in my brain. Dr. John. Yeah, you gotta check this guy out. He's got millions. 3.2 million subscribers, and you can see here he does usually like maybe once or twice a week or even more. He has these riveting conversations. I think he'd be great for you to contact and try to hook up with him.
Okay, because, I will.
I mean, you did all this work, years of research.
It's so important. It's so important, and like it goes so far-reaching that it boggles my mind that something of this magnitude could be just completely ignored.
Yeah, because it's interesting through my life, and I've explained the unfortunate things I've had that are autoimmune related. No doctor ever said to me, well, we need to get to the bottom of what's causing this. And it was just ignored. It's like, treat the symptoms.
Well, that's what they did to me. They're just like,
just treat the symptoms and good luck.
And you ever see, there's a documentary about the people with myalgic encephalitis where they kind of like dehumanize them and make fun of them. There's a documentary where they say these people are imagining their disease.
Oh,
like
my.
Portraying them. People who have these chronic headaches that are just nasty, but it doesn't show up on the scans, like I said. And there was a documentary made about them to like slander them. It was horrifying.
The first thing they do, the medical community, when they don't want to deal with you, is they tell you, oh, it's psychosomatic, it's in your brain, you're imagining.
Exactly. It's somatoform.
Frustrating because there's a very small percentage of people that have psychosomatic illness.
And what's happening is, so they could study this if they used different types of testing. So there are different, what you would call biomarkers, like things that are happening in your body that would speak to this immunosuppression and immune tolerance, but they don't use any of it. They only use stuff that measures antibodies and inflammation, right? So if you don't have that, and what do? They call that evidence-based medicine.
Right.
So it's like, we'll use the wrong tests to tell you don't have a disease, right? It'd be like giving somebody a test for asbestos to see if they have lead poisoning.
Yeah, I mean, we just experienced that during the past 5 years.
Yeah.
And again, we have to be very careful about our use of words here, but I think folks know what I'm talking about.
Right.
The developer of that specific test even said that was not designed to test that specific disease.
Yeah, I said from the very beginning, it's just going to be impossible because of the way it was made.
Right.
It's going to be, and what I did find too is that a lot of times, so this virus could take to the what are called the nasal turbines, like goes into the bone, right?
Sure.
And in the tissue, so it's not in the mucus and stuff, but it goes right in, integrates into the bones.
Oh, yeah.
So when they're testing people, it's not really, they're not getting, they could be infected, but still test negative. Or there's things, that are part of this that are also in people already and come back positive when they don't have something.
Yeah. It's so sad to me that it's 2025 and we live in a world where we can't talk about our own health autonomy. We can't
Yeah.
talk about, diseases and stuff. And even doctors can't openly
Doctors are, yeah, it's like, so the atmosphere has been set up in such a way that if the doctors go against the official narrative, they're crucified.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. The
Right?
handlers, as I call them, the elites, they're the ones that are controlling the narrative, basically, and they get to say what we're allowed to talk about and what we're not. And it's really a damn shame.
And like when I analyze it, so somebody had sent me a paper by this guy named Kevin Galilei, where he was talking, like he's put all these papers and books together saying that there is a global population agenda, like a covert depopulation agenda, which at first, it sounds far out, but then when I was reading, he's like,
Oh, no.
He had a paper. It was called like a subversion, I think, subversion of the public health system. Oh yeah, subversion of medicine and public health. And he's talking about, because Jonas Salk, you know about Jonas Salk, right?
Polio guy. Yeah.
He wrote a book called Survival of the Wisest, saying we need to do something about the population because it's too big.
Look,
He wrote a whole book on it, and there was that quote in the end of my book that I talked about, where I showed people what he was saying was like, it was so absolutely insane that he was saying this, but I can even show you. He said, a major threat to the species is attributed to the increasing size of the human population, which in turn is ascribed to successes in science and technology. This explanation has evoked an attack upon science and the exploitation of its technology, to the development of which are attributed many adverse effects upon the human species and other forms of life. Polluters who befoul the planet affect the quality of life and are regarded as a threat to the present and future equilibrium of the species and of the planet. Those who consider themselves on the side of nature, and therefore of the human species, see others in opposition to both nature and man. Hence, we ought to be concerned with not only with man's relationship to nature, but with man's relationship to himself. And he's saying that to have scientific advances to keep life going for people, like medicine, is a threat to us, because then it's going to make people live longer and we're going to have overpopulation. You know what I mean? So it's like he just jumps to we need to stop that. And then this guy has this paper. It's called The Subversion of Medicine and Public Health by International Security Prerogatives. And he was talking about how that he was aware of a covert depopulation agenda.
Listen, I believe this 1,010%, because what they do is they create drugs to, like I said, appease symptoms, right?
Yeah.
And they look like the good guy. So they go, oh, look, we're creating these drugs to help you. But on the flip side of the coin, what they're doing to decrease the population and their agenda to do that is so covert and sneaky, because it's done through our air, through the water, through medications.
Yeah. And so it was like, yeah, and I was talking about how immunosuppressants was one of the methods of because when you induce immune tolerance, you do shorten the lifespan and you raise the cancer rate. I mean, Erich Traub, he talked about in the book how we could raise the cancer rate to 50% in the mice colonies. And so,
did he ever experiment on humans, or was it only mice and animals?
Oh no, I'm pretty sure he had war crimes on him. And when the Soviet Union captured his lab in East Germany, they were interrogating them about whether they were using the animal incinerator to get rid of human bodies, because they did have forced labor on insulremes. Yeah. And Erich Traub and his student Werner Schaefer were working on an avian/human influenza vaccine. So I'm sure they were testing it on people. He was working in coordination with this other guy, Eugen Hagen. and that guy was actually working in the concentration camps. So I'm pretty sure Erich Traub had war crimes on him. And what they did was they said, you're going to work for us or you're going to Nuremberg.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so they were able to flip him. And then with the help of British intelligence, what was his name? Donald McLean, who was a Soviet double agent, got him out of the Soviet region, and then sent him to the United States in Project Paperclip. Then when he was over here, he was attacking us many times over under our noses. He's like, yeah, use this as a simulate, even though I weaponized it.
Yeah.
And so he did that because they were also doing those airborne tests.
Yes.
Something called Serratia Marcescens, and that it caused a few deaths. It caused a death in San Francisco and all these hospitalizations. And it was the first time they ever saw infections with that bacteria. Well, he weaponized it over in Germany. So he was getting them to spray it all over the cities.
Oh, yeah. That's the best thing to do. Test it out on humans. Yeah.
And so he was up, but there were also simulant tests with insects. So he would also tell them, okay, we have these ticks. They're infected with this harmless bacteria that'll just cause a rash. And that's a way that we'll track it because that's what we did in Nazi Germany. And so they believed him and they did this. And he was going back and forth between Colombia, down in South America, and Plum Island, like in parallel with the bird patterns. Like, so when the birds would fly south, he'd go down to Colombia.
Right.
When the birds would fly back up. Yeah. It was like, so, and then what happened was Donald McLean, he was one of the Cambridge 5 spies. Donald McLean defected to Moscow. Then Kim Philby defected to Moscow. And they were like, they had a big problem on their hands because a lot of these Nazis they took over here was at the advice of these guys who just defected. So these double agents were the ones who gave us all these Nazis. So then they're like, uh-oh, what do we do? And one of John Loftus's, somebody that he knew in the Counterintelligence Corps, which is the Army Counterintelligence, he interrogated Erich Traub, tripped him up in a lie, and then he said, "Do you have anything to say before you're sent off to be tried as a spy?" And he confessed to it after that, even though he wasn't being sent off anywhere. It was like a trick. And so Erich Traub was like broke down and confessed that, yeah, they flipped me when I was over there. They probably blackmailed him with war crimes. So then he was recommending that they prosecute him as a spy, which would have meant execution or at least life in prison. I don't know. But there was all sorts of other stuff going on because since he had all this dirt on all of these programs. And another thing is he was an officer of the FAO, which is the United Nations Food and Agriculture Organization. It's like the agricultural side of the UN. Like, so you got the World Health Organization, then you got the Food and Agriculture Organization, and that gave him diplomatic immunity. Because he became an officer before he came over here. So, and there was like, he created the weapons that we used in North Korea. So we used bioweapons in North Korea, right? And he made a lot of those. So what they did was, or he said something like, I'm just a little guy. I'm just a little veterinarian. And they accepted his answer and they sent him back to Germany. And they let him run this other bioweapons lab in West Germany. And then by 1960, he was prosecuted for embezzlement.
Oh, good. Now, we still have bio labs all over the globe. There's so many. Have you done research into that?
It's grown exponentially. It's just, and and then they think that they can just use the planet as a lab. Like they do all of these tests. Like, there's GMO mosquitoes, for example. All of that's very, very concerning.
We can't say his name because that's like a red flag too, but I think most folks know who we're talking about. And what you're talking about is how he released millions, if not billions, of mosquitoes that were genetically modified. I forget what state. I think it was Florida somewhere.
No, it's Florida, Texas,
Texas.
California. I think they did it nationwide. They did,
Um,
yeah. No, I remember they were saying they were doing it nationwide.
And this was done to make them malaria resistant, correct?
Or like supposedly breed themselves out and it would cut down disease, but it's a terrible idea. And now we have a huge mosquito problem.
Yes, we
like
do.
The mosquitoes are way worse now.
Yeah, I read that. And he was recently on TV today touting how he saved 19 million lives during the past few. I mean, it's terrible. I would love to have these types of conversations. One day, you and I will have to do just a rumble and be able to say what we need to say there.
Yeah, what you can do maybe is like make a short video on YouTube and say, here's the link. That's what I do, actually.
They don't like that when you do that, though. YouTube, they get really PO'd. That's why I don't even like to say the name of the competition. But, they've got AI algorithm tracking everything we say. So, but yeah, you and I are going to have to do something like that so that we can at least have some modicum of freedom of speech here. It's really a nightmare. Do you have any hope during your research? Have you, and your own personal medical trip that you've been on the past few years with the Lymes and stuff, do you have any hope for folks with autoimmune, or do you see any promising? You said nothing's really being done, though, right? To help folks with autoimmune.
It's a lot. What I see is a lot of guessing games. Like people are just throwing a lot of different things at it, hoping something works, and they don't really understand the mechanics of this. If they studied Erich Traub's work, it would be like there's research out there, but the public health system doesn't want to acknowledge that. That's why chronic disease has become so controversial, because they don't want to include that whole science.
Yeah.
Because it would disrupt the other industry, which is also, contributing to this.
Yes.
And then we wonder whether this guy talking about a depopulation agenda might be right. I mean, I don't know, because, when you have Jonas Salk writing books like that saying we need to do something about overpopulation, and this guy is the one who made that other shot. It's like, what is going on here? And so I'm just bewildered, because I just can't believe that they would say something like we should induce tolerance as a form of defense. Like that is the worst idea, because if like anybody who knows anything about this is that when you do that long term, you cause chronic disease, cancer, neurological problems, and you shorten the lifespan.
Explain what you mean to folks by tolerance. Explain that premise.
Your immune system. So chronic immune deficiencies.
Yeah.
That's what you can think of. Immune tolerance is just chronic immunodeficiency. A better word, immune paralysis. Your immune system is paralyzed. It can't fight back. So that's why they call it tolerance, because it's like your immune system is tolerating pathogens that it shouldn't be. But it's not deciding to tolerate it. It's so suppressed it can't fight back.
Right.
So paralysis would be a better word. And Erich Traub did use that word at one point, saying how this immune tolerance thing is very similar to this other, it's the same thing as immune paralysis, which they found when they injected meningococcal antigens into mice.
Yeah. I mean, I kind of believe the depopulation agenda, we see so much proof of it. Again,
because it's like it's so illogical that they didn't include this immune tolerance, and then it's way more illogical when they're talking about using it as a defense strategy. It's like, are you crazy?
Yeah. I mean, look at the Jordan Guidestones too, right? That whole thing for folks that don't know.
I'm a very spiritual person, so I connect with the spiritual realms. Like that's a lot of my strength.
Sure.
Finding things that bring me joy. I love BMX biking. But also I think one thing that has potential is fasting. That's my, I've been looking into that a lot. And there are different kinds of fasts that you can do, so it's not like just this water fast, but I've seen a lot of people have really great results with that. And
Yeah,
I think
cutting sugar out too, because sugar's so toxic to the
well, yeah,
body.
your diet is very important. That's included. But yeah, I don't know. I looked because they used to do that in ancient times where they would fast for a while when they were sick, and so I don't know. That might have potential. I don't
Well,
really
it
know.
might, because it does detox the body. So, now there's a
Yeah.
lot of vitamin things too that help detox. Um, there's a lot of vitamin therapies too that a lot of doctors are now, some of them are able to speak more freely about cleansing the body after what
Right.
we just went through. So, but if you look at the Georgia Guidestones, the
Mhm.
first commandment was to depopulate the planet to, I think it was
Keep it
500,
at keep
keep
it
it at
at
500 million, right?
something like that. Yeah. It was pretty
So take
wild.
1 billion people and reduce that population to 500 million. That's what
Mm.
they essentially, want to do. And yet nobody really knew who the author was of the Georgia Guidestones. I
Yeah.
mean, there are rumors and things, but millions of dollars were spent to build it. So the guy definitely had money and was very able to maintain a secret as to who carved it out and placed it there and how they got the permission to place it on that particular property. And then the rest of the commandments too were really, I mean, but long story short, somebody blew it up, what, like 2 years ago?
Oh, really?
Oh, it's blown to shreds. And the funny thing is they caught it on video. And then the next day or following day, instead of using that as a crime scene, they just came in with cranes and excavators and wiped all the evidence clean. It was done within 48 hours. So instead of having the FBI come, because they came with a bomb, it was on video, and they
Mm-hmm.
blew up the Georgia Guidestones right on video.
Oh,
And
wow. I didn't even know this.
oh
I did
yeah,
not know
and
this.
there's video out there. Go check it out. And
I
then
will.
they drove off, so nobody knew who did it, even though they have video of it, of the car and everything. And
Yeah.
then in a 48-hour period, wiped away all the evidence. Very suspicious.
Maybe they're like trying to give us a message and then take it away, and then whoever keeps the message, you got the message. We
Right.
need to tell you before we do things and stuff. I
Yeah.
don't know.
Yeah, it's just so weird how they just, swept everything under the rug, and you never heard a thing about it afterwards. No investigation, nothing.
Yeah, it's that's very strange.
Yeah,
I mean,
really.
yeah, I believe that there's kind of like a battle going on between good and evil. And
Yep, it's definitely a battle. Definitely a battle. So, what's the next book that you're working on? What does it have to do?
I was gonna call it immune paralysis. I
Mhm.
think. I don't know. Like, so I have like the chapters. What is it gonna? A table of contents. I'll see what I had. What did I have here? It was called immune paralysis, immune tolerance, and the dark triad of cancer, chronic disease, and neuropsychiatric disorders.
Oh, there you go.
So that was like, yeah, I mean, I could change, but that was the basic thing. The subtitle, but the main title was immune paralysis, because I just feel like people would understand it. And then in the beginning, like the first chapter is called Immune Tolerance is Immune Paralysis. So I explained to people that this is that you're a paralyzed immune system, because I know the immune tolerance is very vague and doesn't really describe it very well, because it's not really tolerating things. It's just it can't fight back, so it's like being taken over.
Sure.
paralyzed.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna try to get this book going, and I want to talk about, how it affects public health in a huge way, and that's why they don't want to acknowledge it, because it would kind of flip
Now,
the industry upside down.
oh, absolutely. Just so folks know, you don't have a medical degree, you don't have a science degree.
So yeah, and I was like driven on a survival mechanism. It was like I had
Right.
to figure out my disease because it was something that my life depended on. Right.
Yeah.
So a lot of times, the doctors, they may have these degrees and stuff, but they don't really care about a lot of them don't care. They're just doing it for a paycheck. They don't know. They haven't gone and researched all this stuff like I have. I mean, I did an immense amount of work into this. I read every single paper Erich Traub ever published and really just analyzed it over and over to see, because he would hide a lot of things. He would make things very vague and hide a lot of things, but I could figure it out when he was doing something sneaky. I could kind of see where he was going with certain things.
How many years did you work on that book?
I think about 7 years.
Wow.
7 years.
Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of times I remember there were times when my eyes would just feel like they're popping out of my skull because there's staring at a screen all day, reading PubMed all day. But this book, Sleeper Agent, I mean, this is documented. I have footnotes pretty much after every sentence almost, like everything I say, I back up and you can see the paper where it goes, and I'm
just shocked that no one from any medical community tried to reach out to you to figure this stuff out, I have had physicians and such. Oh, good. What was that like for you?
I was my good friend Sebastian in Germany. Then he has a friend, a woman. I forget what her name is, but she's a German physician too, and she thinks that my work is excellent.
Good.
And then I think, I've had some others, I think, here and there, but I think if people dove into this, because it's explosive what it's uncovered, and it's just kind of like it's hard to get it out, and I got to work harder on trying to get it to people.
No, you do, and I agree. Now, I read it, and it's the kind of book where it's very engaging once you start reading it, and you do have footnotes all over the place. So if somebody doesn't understand something, they can go follow the path of how you came to that. Do you think it's an easy read for the everyday person? Will they be able to get through it and understand the premise?
What I would do, I'm going to have the audiobook out like within a month.
Good.
The audiobook will be done. It's pretty much done now. I just have a few more things to do to it. So if you're not a reader, I would suggest getting the audiobook.
Who's doing the narration? You?
Well, I used artificial intelligence software, right? I cloned my voice to read certain parts of the book, but it's another different voice, a better voice, reading, more professional sounding, reads the whole thing. But it's cool because like when I have a quote, like if it's a quote from Erich Traub, it'll be read with a guy who has a German accent.
Oh, nice.
And then like if there's a Russian guy, I have a guy who has a Russian accent reading the quote.
Yeah,
it's
that's
really
good.
cool. And I cloned John Loftus's voice to read his forward.
Oh, nice.
So it's going to be awesome. I would suggest to people, I'm going to start selling it at my website, the Sleeper Agent audiobook. It's going to be really great.
Good. So that'll be a lot easier for folks to kind of comprehend.
Yeah, and another thing you could do with this book too is like you don't have to read it through. It's like you could also flip through it, but I mean, I don't know. I think it really starts getting going when you get into Traub, because I had to beforehand I had to cover early things and all this other stuff to so people can understand later on.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I had to show like some of the Russian stuff, and uh, just I had to show the whole bioweapons race kind of, and then I go, here comes Erich Traub. He's like in chapter 5. I think it's called The Birth of a Bioweaponeer. Yep, chapter 5, and then this is chapter 5 goes into Traub, and then Traub. Then it goes. So I say some people, if you want to learn about Traub, just start at chapter 5 if you want.
Yeah,
and it goes. It's just like because he's somebody who is always very mysterious, and I just was like, okay, this is going to be the first book that really goes into Erich Traub, and I did that.
What were you hoping to? What's your end game, Adam? What are you
honestly? Yeah, my end game is to promote. So my end game is to promote this the biosecurity ethics and immune tolerance awareness initiative, which is like so. Hold on one sec. It's just like, yeah. So the Biosecurity Ethics and Immune Tolerance Awareness Initiative exists to educate the public about the role of immune tolerance in chronic diseases, neurological and neuropsychiatric disorders, and cancers. We further educate and advocate for ethical biosecurity practices and informed policy decisions made in full transparency. Through ethical guidelines working to close critical vulnerabilities, defend actual national security from foreign influence in public health and biodefense strategies, rather than using national security as a guise to hide scandals and evade accountability. So it's about trying to get people to understand how unethical all of this biodefense work is when they're spraying germs on us, saying, oh, we can just spray these germs on people just to see how it spreads out. That's very unethical. So it's also
really an expose. You want to expose what they're doing to our air, our food, our water, and our biology, basically.
Yeah, and I mean, there's a whole other side, chemical warfare, and I think it could also be played out in the same way as this is. It's very under the radar, esoteric. And that's kind of like what I think is that our country's been kind of slowly taken over, and they're just trying to poison us.
Yeah, I really agree with that. I mean, like people would say, oh, cloud seeding, it doesn't take place. It's fake news. It's conspiracy theory. And now it's being banned in certain states across the country. I think Florida is banning cloud seeding and all this stuff that they're doing. I always say the only difference between a conspiracy theory and the truth is it used to be 6 months. Now it's like 3 months. The truth comes out, the truth comes out. Well, I don't know. It's scary, especially when you've lived through autoimmune disease crises and things like both of us have. It's very scary to have these things happen to us and to know that they originated from some government lab somewhere back in the day, somebody doing, testing on us like we're a bunch of ticks or a bunch of rats. I mean, that's how I hate to say it, but that's how we're looked at, right?
Yeah, and I mean their whole strategy of just we can make a shot for every disease. We can make a shot for every disease, and we'll be all set. That's and it's burning out our immune system. We can't tolerate that. Our body's not designed to be constantly challenged, and injections are a very different thing than another than an infection you encounter in nature. When you're injecting stuff into your blood, it's a lot different, I think. And all of the stuff that's in there, it's just, I mean, it's not surprising at all why we are so sick.
Yeah. Well, if you look at the vaccine regimen that children go through now, what is it, like 100 and something vaccines?
That's what I was saying. It was like 94 or something. And so there was a Russian bioweaponeer. His name was Ken Alabek, and he was saying in his book Biohazard that he has the worst allergies of anyone he knows, that he's all messed up, and he's like, I can't eat barely anything without getting this reaction. He said the many vaccines that I had against anthrax, tularemia, and other stuff probably ruined my health and shortened my life. That's what he said. So if he's saying that too many of these will ruin your health, why are we overloading kids? It's just, to me, it looks like sabotage.
It does. I mean, you don't have to be a doctor or a scientist to come to that summation.
Well, I also talk in my book about how the guy who approved that shot that we can't talk about, he was the son of this MP Chumakov guy who was like the top Stalinist bioweaponeer of the Soviet Union. And his son approved that. His son was working at the FDA and approved that. And if you read my book about Chumakov, you'll read all about him. He was a serious player in the bioweapons program.
Oh, sure. Let me tell you, this goes deep. It goes very deep, deeper than we're allowed to know. And it's sad because there's forget about health autonomy. I mean, look at the Internet of Bodies.
Right.
People don't know about IOB. They need to know, they'll know about IoT, which is the Internet of Things, right? Because everybody shops online and everybody likes to buy things through the internet, but they don't research things like IOB, which is the Internet of Bodies. Now, this is a real thing. It's not make-believe. You go to the doctor. Now, what do, Adam? You sign into a portal, right?
I haven't been in many years because they just don't do anything for me. But
yeah, well, unfortunately, I have.
Yeah,
I had, because of my knee from Lyme's disease, so I have to see him regularly. But now there are healthcare portals, so you log into the portal, and all your medical records are there. Everything they need to know about you is on the Internet of Bodies, hackable information by any standards. So, any country could just come hack your most private data.
Oh, and I got a letter saying that happened too. I
get them monthly. I'm not kidding you. Oh, this was breached. There was a security breach on your medical data, and they got your name, address, your phone number, your height, your weight, everything that they need to know, your social security number. See, people,
probably why I get all these scam texts constantly.
Yeah, me too. Everybody does.
Yeah.
Email, everything. But people need to start, doing the legwork to research healthcare autonomy. And sure, is it easy to log into a portal and be able to see your doctor's notes and get your prescriptions and all that? It's easy, but at what cost, Adam? Are we surrendering our own health autonomy here? So that's why I wanted to connect with you and have a second conversation, because this is so important.
Yeah, I'm happy to do it.
Good.
Anytime.
Yeah, we'll definitely do this again. Like I said, the next one maybe we'll do in a more secure environment where we can speak a little more freely and not have to be so concerned. But so I'm going to give you a minute or so to reach out to people, have a closing statement, tell people, show them your book, tell them where they can find you.
So, this is my book, The Sleeper Agent, The Rise of Lyme Disease, Chronic Illness, and the Great Imitator Antigens of Biological Warfare. It is the first book that goes into the work of Erich Traub and how he discovered the underpinnings of chronic disease and used them for biological weapons work. And also, I talk about how our public health system, in the end chapter, I talk about how the public health system seems to have been taken over. But it will be available in audiobook form within a month. And I think if people have a hard time with the book, a lot of people love audiobooks, so that's going to be done very soon. And I would suggest everybody get involved with your local health freedom movement, because the medical system is just becoming very authoritarian, and they're trying to remove religious exemption. I mean, that's a that's the most basic right we have, is bodily autonomy. We have a right to say, no, we don't want you to inject anything into me. I have a right to just be. And that's kind of like the idea here, is we really got to push back on them. So that's what I would say to people. And you can find me at thesleeperagent.com. And I'm also on X, AW Finnegan. I don't really use Facebook very much. I have one, but I don't really use it. So yeah, that's basically what I'll say, and I'll close it with that.
Awesome. Thank you again so much. This was such a great conversation, and I can't stress the importance of it. You know, and now that I have Oliver, my little poodle, on my lap, a real quick note about dogs. I stopped giving Oliver any jabs as well.
Yeah. Oh, definitely.
He got so sick from them that I couldn't.
We're not designed for that. You know, like our bodies aren't meant for that. Like, it's not. Yeah. It's terrible.
And to watch your poor animal suffer. He got the last jabs he got was about 2 years ago. They gave him 2 or 3, and the poor dog suffered for days. And I called up my vet, and I said, "That's it. You know, I'll take him for well care checkups, but no more. Are you doing this to my animal?" Oh no!
Yeah, it's horrifying.
Yeah.
So I feel you. Yeah, I actually posted something about that. It was like, now they feel they have to give dogs, endless jabs too. It's just crazy.
It is. And they have a Lyme's vaccine for the dog.
Oh yeah,
they don't have one for humans. Not that I would take it anyway.
They had to take it off the market, Lymerix, when they had a Lyme vaccine.
They took it off.
Yeah, it hurt so many people. They took it off the market. I'm sure they have new ones though, and they're not any better, I'd say.
Guinea pigs. That's how they look at us.
Yeah.
Really just, and and they put it under the guise of wanting to help. You know, and
I mean, that's the idea.
Yeah, they have nefarious agenda. They just do. They do. But thank you again so much, Adam. And I'm going to be in touch with you soon.
Cool.
So that we can have a real conversation without having to worry.
Yeah.
Right, dear?
Definitely.
Thank you again so much. I'll be in touch.
Awesome. Thank you.
God bless, sweetie. Bye-bye. So thank you all so very much for joining us. And as I said, I love having Adam on because this is a topic that we really need to think about and start educating ourselves. And as we wrap up this powerful conversation while Oliver's kissing me, with Adam Finnegan today, it's clear that while we have challenges of chronic disease in America, and it is immense, it's kind of insurmountable. And it's very concerning. And we've covered the truth behind this silent epidemic or years and decades of Adam's research. But more importantly, we've touched on pathways to change and what we could do, advocacy, personal choices, things like that. Advocate for yourself because at the end of the day, nobody else will. And the truth can be tough to hear, but it also empowers us to act. And that's why I love Adam's work. So let's continue the conversation, educate ourselves, and work towards a healthier future for all Americans and all of our global citizens as well. Thank you all for tuning in. And again, you've been listening to Ethereal Encounters Unveiled on United Public Radio Network and the UFO Paranormal Radio Network, which is 105.3 on the Gulf Coast and 107.7 FM in beautiful New Orleans. Each week, we have so many various guests and hosts on this network. And of course, it's on the radio as well. We love to interview authors with best-selling books and maybe not so best-selling books, interesting, and books that we love to read and enjoy to read, and we love to share them with you. And these amazing individuals are very well-versed in their respective fields, which include topics ranging from ancient history, paranormal, of course, extraterrestrial. We're going to be having Preston Dennett on July 3rd, so definitely tune in for that. I love having conversations with Preston. Tomorrow I have Michelle Decharay. I probably butchered her last name, but she is the host of The Outer Realm, and that's Thursdays at 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time live. So please make sure you tune in. We're going to be live, and jump in the chat room. Now wait, you'll see this on Friday. Hello, I had a brain fart. The show will already have aired, but you get the point of what I'm trying to say is that every Thursday we have exciting guests on, and please support the network and all of our hosts. These are mostly passion projects for all of us. We do it because we love it. That's basically the reason why. So God bless all of you, each and every one of you. Love you all dearly. And Oliver says goodbye too, right? He's such a good boy. Take care, guys, and don't forget, give us a thumbs up. Gotta say this, and please subscribe to Ethereal Encounters Unveiled on YouTube. It means so much to me when you do. Yes, it really helps support this network. We don't get paid for this, so every way that you can show us some love is greatly appreciated. Godspeed. God bless. Take care. Goodbye.